So tinnitus is what we're talking about now. It
Yeah.
permanently affects 6 million people in the UK. Almost half of us have experienced some form of it at some point in our lives. I certainly have every now and again, but not regularly.
No, I have it all the time, and for those that have to live with the condition, the ringing in their ears can have, for some, a debilitating impact on their day-to-day lives. Philippa Thompson reports.
Imagine if this is what you could hear all day, every day. That's what it sounds like to have severe tinnitus. Noel Gallagher and Gary Newman are amongst the 6 million people in the UK who suffer with the condition permanently. The noises can be whistling, ringing or buzzing and can be heard in one or both ears. It happens when hair cells in the inner ear are damaged, often a result of being exposed to loud noises, and it usually affects people over 55. Tinnitus is rarely a sign of a serious condition, but if untreated, it can result in permanent deafness. Philippa Thompson, Good Morning Britain.
Well, today there's a new poll by the charity Action on Hearing Loss, which marks Tinnitus Awareness Week this week, and it says that 43% of people, almost 1 in 2, have experienced tinnitus. Let's talk to Trey Lowe, who has the condition, and audiologist Gemma Twitchen alongside him. Very good morning to you. Okay. Trey, how would you describe the ringing in your ears?
So my ringing is just, I'd probably describe it like a sea of noise, sort of static, classic ringing tones as well, and also like a low rumble. So it's just sort of ear noise is how I'd describe it.
So it started out as this noise, the one that we heard a little earlier.
So a bit more like a high-pitched tone.
Yeah, a bit like a kettle whistling, yeah.
And when did it start, Trey?
So when I was 15, I had an appendectomy and I had an allergic reaction to a drug during recovery. And when I sort of got out of that, I was saying to my parents, can't you hear that noise? I thought everyone could hear it in the room. And they were like, what noise? And that's pretty much where my journey started. And then being a musician and being a DJ over the years, it just got louder and louder and louder.
And that's because of the environment you were working in, you weren't protecting your ears enough from it.
Yeah, exactly. Because of the way it started, I didn't realise that loud music was actually making it worse. It's silly now I look back, but at the time I just didn't make that link. It's only, you know, I DJ'd in 2008, it was really loud, and suddenly my tinnitus has jumped up from like 5 out of 10 to like a 10 out of 10. I was like, whoa.
So from this noise that we've just been hearing, you would say it's worse than that now?
I want to say, yeah, it's louder than that. It's louder, and the spectrum, the frequency spectrum is much wider than that now.
So it sounds like someone playing a lot of notes on a keyboard all at the same time.
Yeah.
Trey, I mean, how on earth do you cope with that on a day-to-day? Because for someone who doesn't have tinnitus, and I've experienced it when I've been at loud gigs or whatever, it wears off. The idea is it would just be incredibly distracting all the time.
I mean, it isn't. I'm generally a really happy soul. I work out, I eat well. So the suffering only comes from what you make it mean. And I don't make it mean anything. My hearing is absolutely perfect. Everything else in my life is pretty much perfect. And it's just me dealing with the condition. And it's not that hard. But I understand for some people it is incredibly
So it's just how you process it mentally.
It's what you make it mean, and it's the techniques you employ to deal with it. So I do a lot of mindfulness where I just say, thanks, tinnitus, I can hear you, and yeah, it might be a bit distressing, but it's okay. Do you know, it's like acknowledging a child screaming in a room, do you know, rather than make it be a bad thing. It's just, okay, it's there.
Gemma, it's interesting hearing Trey talk about it. There is no cure, is there?
Not at the moment, no. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions, though, is that because there's no cure, there's nothing that you can do about it. And so that's one of the biggest messages that we want to get out there today, is that if you do experience tinnitus, don't give up. As Trey has kind of already said, he's managed to put a positive spin on it and deal with it. There's lots of help available. If you go and see your GP, get referred to see a hearing specialist, and they will do a full hearing assessment.
And also interesting that Trey says that even though he's got that noise, and worse than that, the one that we're playing, he hasn't experienced any hearing loss.
Yeah, I mean, it does. Sometimes you can get tinnitus without hearing loss, but they do often come hand in hand together. So I think Trey's quite lucky that he doesn't have a hearing loss as well.
I mean, I think I do, but not where it's that noticeable, where it's an issue. I think there's always a link between some sort of hearing loss and tinnitus, but it's not so bad where I notice it.
If there's people watching, and if one or two of us, one in two has experienced this, and there's 6 million living with it all the time, what would your advice be to them in terms of just trying to cope day to day or finding a way of dealing with it?
I would say, for me, stress is probably the worst thing when it comes to tinnitus. So it would be looking at your life and any stresses that are in your life, removing them, and then make sure you're fit and you're healthy and you're eating right. I mean, it's the same advice probably for any condition.
But all of those things have certainly helped you.
Oh, massively, yeah.
I think it's really, because it does depress people when they get it, because, you know, once you know that it's not going to go away and you're going to have to live with it, that can be, you know, something that can make you down. But I think it's really interesting how you say you can choose to give it that negative meaning.
Exactly, yeah.
And that for some people, that's quite a hard message, I think, to process.
Because people automatically, obviously, would go into sort of fight or flight mode, right? This noise that shouldn't be there. And automatically they want to get away from it. But really, it's kind of like making friends with it, as cliche that it sounds. That's what you've got to do, because it's not getting anywhere.
It sounds extraordinary to describe it like that, but clearly it's working, which I think is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Well, great.